Hey guys, I want to welcome you back to another episode of Pistons Talk Podcast presented by FanDuel. We have a lot to get into in tonight's episode. We have four segments that we'll be going over with you guys. Segment one: how does Victor Wembanyama's new contract extension affect Jalen Duren's market? We'll be getting into that. Segment two: there is some conversation about Michael Porter Jr. possibly being on the trading block if he does not get a contract extension from the Brooklyn Nets. Could MPJ be an option for the Pistons? We'll be going over that, looking at how many years he has left on his contract and who are the tradable players on the Detroit Pistons that could make a Michael Porter Jr. potential trade. Segment three: the Ringer just dropped their top 100 players in the NBA. We have Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, and Ausar Thompson in this list. We'll be going over the list 1 through 100. We're not going to read it all on the screen, but I will put it on the screen for you guys that haven't seen it and you want to take a screenshot of it, share it with friends, family, get into the debates. I'll let you guys do that. In segment four, we'll be going over the Detroit Pistons two-way players. They did fill their last two-way spot, I believe yesterday it was. We'll be going over each two-way player. This is like super deep in the trenches. If you guys care about the Pistons, three two-way contract players. If you don't, I 100% understand. Like, a lot of these guys are going to spend most of their time in the G League with the Motor City Cruise. They might get a call up if it's just like, back-to-backs or load management days for, the Detroit Pistons bench players or starters. Well, we'll be going over that, but let's get into today's episode, you guys. So Victor Wembanyama signed a new contract extension with the San Antonio Spurs. Now, could Wemby's deal affect Jalen Duren? I think before we get into Wemby's deal and what he signed for, we've been trying to keep up with all of the conversations, all the intel, all the leaks that have been coming out from Jalen Duren's camp and his representation and what we heard from the Detroit Pistons most recently. They've asked for the max. Max would be $287 million, right? Obviously, the Pistons have countered, saying like most we could realistically do is 35. That's where they're comfortable with. And it's kind of been a stalemate. We haven't really seen any type of Shams tweet about, the Detroit Pistons and Jalen Duren have agreed to a contract extension. Wemby was eligible for a massive payday. I'm going to put the graphic on the screen. We can kind of break it down. So he took a 25% max versus the 30% max, which he was eligible for because he made Defensive Player of the Year and All NBA. So he signed for a 5-year rookie scale extension of $252 million, which is an average annual salary of $50 million. He was eligible for 303, which would be the 30% supermax because of the NBA and Defensive Player of the Year. So he took $51 million less to help the Spurs fill out the roster and have optionality and have a little bit more flexibility. So a guy like Wemby, who I think as Pistons fans, we can all agree, one of the best defenders in the league. I mean, the guy is just, I don't even, what was it, like 7'4" or 7'5"? He just blocks everything. He just took $50 million less in his average annual salaries at 50. With Jalen Duren making All NBA, he's eligible for 287, and Wemby just signed for 252. This 100% affects Jalen Duren's market. A lot of moves and a lot of centers that were either traded, like Walker Kessler, who only signed 4 for 130. Like, that average annual salary is, I believe, like what, 32, if I'm doing the math correctly in my head. Walker Kessler is a good defender, but I think we can all agree he's not the same offensive talent that Jalen Duren is currently, but he's a better defender. And he signed 4 for 130. Wemby signs 5 years, 252. There's no way, shape, or form that this Pistons front office is going to give Jalen Duren the max. I don't think there's even a conversation about paying him in the mid 40s, $45 million a year. I don't even think there's a conversation about $40 million a year because you just had the Defensive Player of the Year signed for 252. And the most that the Pistons are going to offer you is $35 million a year. I think his market has just gone down completely with not only him signing this deal today, but he was eligible for more and he said, I want to help the team. It affects his market that way. It also affects his market with teams that he had reportedly talked to in free agency, like the Los Angeles Lakers, who decided to move on, like the Boston Celtics, that he did have interest in playing for. They went the cheaper route with Mitchell Robinson, who's a better defender. Obviously, Mitchell Robinson's a poor free throw shooter, but all the teams really outside of Sacramento, there's not really too many options for him to get paid. And with the teams that did have cap space in free agency before it started, like the Chicago Bulls and the Brooklyn Nets, Chicago doesn't have the cap space to offer you a restricted free agent sign and trade deal, which would have been a 4-year, $177 million price point, which the average annual salary with that would be 44 million to be exact. They don't have the cap space to offer you that anymore. The only other team that does have cap space is the Brooklyn Nets, who we'll talk about in segment 2 with Michael Porter Jr., but they don't have enough cap space to offer you the max. So all the cards are really in the Detroit Pistons and Trajan Langdon in the front office's hands right now. Like, they hold all the cards. Like, if Jalen Duren, wants more money with sign and trade possibilities, there's not too many teams out there that can really give him the maximum money that his representation wants. Like, the 30 to 35 million price point with the Pistons is probably what he's going to have to sign for, because each and every day, like Wemby signing again for $252 million over a 5-year price period, taking the 25% max versus the 30% max that he was eligible for, it completely just shafted his market, because Wemby, I think we can all agree, is one of the top 10 best players in the NBA. I mean, you could argue that he's already like kind of like knocking on the door at top 5. I mean, I'm not going to get into debates with who the top 5 players in the NBA are. I know the Ringer did that, which we'll get into in a little bit. But again, circling back to Jalen Duren, like, his market is just getting, it's like a rubber band almost, like on your arm every time. Like, it versus Wemby, then it's Walker Kessler, then the Celtics went after Mitchell Robinson. Like, the Kings realistically don't have anything the Pistons would want to sign and trade. His agent doesn't want to sign and trade. The Pistons don't want to trade him. So Jalen Duren is going to be on a contract that isn't crazy, and it could be movable if things don't work out. But did want to kind of discuss the Wemby contract and how it does affect Jalen Duren's current market. I want to get into segment 2. And this is a player that we talked about last deadline. This was a player that I think a lot of us went back and forth with. And I saw both sides of the fence with the wanting of Michael Porter Jr. and other Pistons fans saying, like, you know what, Anthony, I can't really sell myself on the Pistons trading for Michael Porter Jr. Now, there was a report, I believe yesterday it was, and we'll put the graphic on the screen that we made for you guys, that Michael Porter Jr. could be traded before the season if he and Brooklyn cannot agree on an extension. And this comes from New York Post _Lewis, and he covers the New York Knicks and the Brooklyn Nets. So they could be looking to shop Michael Porter Jr. if both sides cannot come to a contract extension agreement. Now, if you look at Michael Porter Jr.'s contract, it's not crazy. I mean, for the level of production that you're getting, and he had a fantastic season with Brooklyn being the number 1 option, being the guy, which I think was a really big adjustment period for him, because when he was in Denver, he was more of like a 3rd option, sometimes a 4th option, depending on the night. And he really took a huge leap, I thought, in just being a number 1 option, being a 20-point per game scorer for Brooklyn. Obviously, Brooklyn was not a good basketball team, but that's because they're in a rebuild right now. They did trade for Julius Randle, so they do have a little bit more size in the front court. They don't currently have a center, which we'll kind of get into some possible trades with Michael Porter Jr. in a little bit. But if we just look at his contract, you guys. So last season in 25, or this past season, excuse me, in 2025-26, 27 years old, was only making $38.3 million. This upcoming season in 2026-27, he'll be 28. He is set to make $40 million, and he will be an unrestricted free agent at the end of this season, being 29 years old. So if you do trade for him, you most likely are going to give him an extension right away. Like right away. He wants an extension. He wants a long-term money. His last extension with the Nuggets, I believe, was like 5 years, 179. Like, I don't know what a MPJ extension does look like. I know we kind of talk about getting Cade a secondary scoring punch. I see a lot of you guys still very underwhelmed with the offseason, and I 100% get it. I think Michael Porter Jr. does make a whole lot of sense for this team in terms of just like the scoring option. He's a good three-point shooter as well. Now, like, what does a possible starting five look like with him? I'm not entirely sure because with the way free agency and this offseason has gone, we're going to go over the tradable players that you could be in play if you do entertain a Michael Porter Jr. trade. These are the tradable players that the Pistons can actually trade. Now, Jalen Duren is a huge question mark. So potentially anywhere between 30 million, which is kind of like where the Pistons want to pay him, 30 to 35, to 57 million would be the maximum he's allowed to sign for if it was like a sign and trade situation. I don't know if it'd be 57, but Jalen Duren is just a wild card, huge question mark. But the other contracts that the Pistons can trade is Duncan Robinson, which is non-guaranteed deal at 15.9. I believe only 2 million of that is actually guaranteed. Ron Holland going into this is going to be Ron Holland's third season already. So he's at a $9 million cap hit. Danish Jenkins, who's on a $4 million cap hit. Tolu Smith, who's on a 9 guaranteed deal as well at $2.4 million. And Chaz Lanier is on a $2.1 million deal. So total outgoing salaries is 33 and a half. That does not include Jalen Duren because he's not under contract currently. He's a restricted free agent, but the Pistons could pursue a player roughly making between 43 million and 45 million. At the bottom of the graphic, I want you guys to read this. Players who signed with a new team cannot be traded until December 15th, 2026. So that means John Collins. That means Isaiah Joe. That means all the free agents that you just re-signed and brought back, like Kevin Huerter, Javonte Green. Those guys cannot be traded. Now, obviously, I did not talk about Cade Cunningham because you're not trading Cade Cunningham for Michael Porter Jr. That's nonsense. Like, it's not going to happen. Ausar Thompson, again, I think Ausar Thompson is completely off the table for a Michael Porter Jr. trade swap. So you talk about, could you see a possible sign-in trade with the Brooklyn Nets and the Detroit Pistons? They don't have a center. Could they work out a deal with a deal centered, I should say, around Jalen Duren and Michael Porter Jr.? Maybe there is a couple different players and salary management. Like, could that be a conversation? It's possible. It's possible if these restricted free agent conversations and talks, keep on going. Like, we're July 10th into this. I don't know how much longer it's going to linger on. Hopefully, it's not an all summer thing, and we have to keep talking about it because I'm sure you guys are sick of me talking about it. We just kind of want to see what's going to get done, but I wouldn't rule. You can't really rule it out. You can't rule it out because he's still a restricted free agent. Brooklyn doesn't have a center. They do have some cap space to maneuver around. So that's an option. Also, you have like Duncan Robinson, Ron Holland. Like, the Ron Holland aspect is interesting because that was a player that they were very high on. Last deadline, the Brooklyn Nets wanted Tobias Harris because of the salary matching, Ron Holland, and 3 first. That was the conversation. Obviously, the Pistons backed out. They thought that was a little bit too hefty of a price for Michael Porter Jr. And I'm kind of with them. I think that's a little bit too rich for my blood. Ron Holland, who's a good prospect, Tobias Harris, who's on an expiring salary, in 3 future first round picks. That's a little bit much for a guy that needs a brand new contract, in my opinion, anyways. Someone in the comment section is probably going to say, pull the damn trigger. Like, we need to get Cade a number 2 option. I'll let you guys have your opinions, but those were the conversations that were had for MPJ. I would keep an eye out on it. I don't know if Brooklyn wants to give him a contract extension given where the franchise is at currently with a rebuild. Like, Julius Randle is there, Michael Porter Jr. is there, and it's nothing but young prospects. Like, I like their draft pick this year, Mikal Brown Jr. is going to be a really good guard. Igor Demon's nice. I like Drake Powell. They have some front court players that are intriguing to me as well. But, be on the lookout if, talks kind of stall with MPJ with his contract extension. He could be moved before the season does start because he wants a new deal. But I know he's a player that a lot of us talked about last deadline. We've talked about him this summer. I know he kind of rubs people the wrong way with like the podcast and the off the court stuff. His podcast tour last year was legendary, just from an entertainment standpoint. As a podcaster, I don't even know like how he said half the stuff because it was just like crazy. But did want to discuss it with you guys for a little bit. Before we do get into segment 3, we have to hear from our sponsors over at the FanDuel Sportsbook. And right now, you guys, we have 2026-2027 Eastern Conference winner odds, with the New York Knicks being the odds-on favorite at a plus 310. The Boston Celtics are at a plus 490. I don't know why. Toronto Raptors are at a plus 650. We'll see if that Kawhi trade actually even goes through. Kind of dicey right now. The Detroit Pistons are at a plus 750. Cleveland Cavaliers are at a plus 800. And the Philadelphia 76ers are at a plus 850. I still don't know why Vegas isn't buying the Philadelphia 76ers. Maybe it's just because they know Joel Embiid's not going to be healthy, and maybe they don't buy a Tyrese Maxey and Jalen Brown being a top Eastern Conference team. I could totally see Philly being a top 4 seed going into this season, but it's going to be interesting, man. It's going to be interesting. I did mention for our segment 3, we were going to be talking about the top 100 players from the Ringer. Now, these lists always piss people off. And I think that's like the main objective of it, is to cause debate and cause discourse online. Now, we went ahead and put their ranking in a graphic that you guys can read along if you're watching live on YouTube. If you're an audio listener, they did make a top 100 list. I'm not going to read the top 100 list, but if you guys want to go on their website and look for it, if you're an audio listener, if you're watching on YouTube, you can actually see the top 100 players. And I kind of put a rectangle around where Cade Cunningham came in, where Jalen Duren came in, and where Ausar Thompson came in. So Cade Cunningham did crack the top 10. He's at number 9. We'll just read the top 10. So it goes Shai Gilgeous-Alexander 1, Victor Wembanyama 2, Nikola Jokic 3, Luka Doncic 4, Jaylen Brown 5, Anthony Edwards 6, Giannis Antetokounmpo 7, Kawhi Leonard 8, Cade Cunningham 9, Stephen Curry 10. So Cade comes in at number 9. Now, I could see some people arguing that they wouldn't have Ant above Cade, but again, it's so subjective of how you're ranking these players. Like, is it playoff success? Is it what they do for their team? How important they are to their team? I'm just happy Cade got into some top 10 consideration. So he's in the top 10. Jalen Duren comes in at 44, and players that are ranked above Jalen Duren, I'll read you just say Joel Embiid's at 43, Aaron Gordon's at 42, Cooper Flagg's at 41, Desmond Bane at 40, Rudy Gobert at 39, Franz Wagner at 38, Lauri Markkanen at 37, Amen Thompson at 36, and Derek White at 35. So kind of gives you a range of where Jalen Duren's at. Players that Jalen Duren is actually ranked above: Dylan Harper from the Spurs, De'Aaron Fox from the Spurs, Konkin Nipple at 47, Zion Williamson at 48, Trey Murphy at 49, Brandon Miller at 50. So the Ringer has him at 44. Ausar Thompson comes in at 56, and players that are ranked above Ausar Thompson: Darius Garland from the Clippers, Julius Randle from the Nets, Keontae George from the Jazz, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, SGA's cousin, from the Hawks, Jade McDaniels from the Timberwolves, and Brandon Miller from the Hornets. So Ausar is at 56. Players Ausar is ranked above: Michael Porter Jr., who we were just talking about, Jared Allen from the Cavs, Dylan Brooks from the Phoenix Suns, Alex Caruso from, I was going to say the Lakers, OKC Thunder, and Mikal Bridges from the reigning champion New York Knicks. So Ausar's at 56. So this list, again, like it's highly debatable. It really depends how you value these players, but the Pistons do crack 3 players in the top 100. You do have some former Pistons. I did see Tobias Harris in here at 86, but I did want to talk about it with you guys for a couple of minutes. Again, if you guys want to take a screenshot of that top 100, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be talking about it on their podcast, throughout the week with this top 100. I like to see that Cade's at 9. Jalen Duren at 44, I think, is actually going to cause quite a bit of debate, and same with Ausar Thompson at 56. But again, as a Piston fan, I'm happy we got 3 guys in the top 100. It means that we have a good young core, and obviously we want to bring in someone else that is considered a top 100 player next to Cade Cunningham as possibly a secondary scorer. But last segment of the podcast we're going to get into, you guys, is the 3 two-way spots. Now, with the two-way spots, you're allowed to carry 15 active roster players and 3 two-way contract players. Now, the 3 two-way players on the Detroit Pistons are Elijah Harkless, who they just signed recently, Isaac Jones, who we saw in the Summer League yesterday, and Ugonna Onyenso, who is a second-round pick for the Detroit Pistons. I want to talk about each individual player a little bit, tell you about them if you guys aren't too familiar. So I want to start with Elijah Harkless, who maybe you guys aren't too familiar with. He's a defensive-minded guard that is just a dog defensively, has really good hands. A lot of people rave about his defense. Even though he's only 6'3", he plays bigger than 6'3". Now, in terms of depth chart with your point guards, when you talk about Cade Cunningham, Abuka Corino, Danish Jenkins, like Elijah Harkless is like your 4th-string center. I don't know how many minutes he's going to get with the Detroit Pistons. I could see him being the Motor City Cruise starting point guard. You look at his G League stats, like he just fills it up in the G League. Like I said, he's a defensive guard, but he's been averaging 20 points in the G League for the past couple of seasons. I know he did get a little bit of stint with Utah last season, had some good games. The shot doesn't look bad, but like he's not the most consistent 3-point shooter. Again, this is just a depth piece for the Detroit Pistons. The Crews probably have their brand new starting point guard. So I might go out to a Crews game this upcoming season, kind of check out what he's about, see how good that defense is, see if the 3-point shot looks a little bit more consistent. But he's a guy that I know Will Hardy from the Utah Jazz, when I was watching some interviews, he raved about his defense. I was watching some clips of him on Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic and just disrupting everything. He kind of seems like a Detroit Piston. He's a really good culture fit for a defensive-minded guard. If there are injuries throughout the season, obviously we don't want to see injuries. He's a player that could automatically get called up, and he could provide some bench minutes for the Pistons this upcoming season. Now, the second player, Isaac Jones, we saw him yesterday in the Detroit Pistons Summer League game. And he's been on the two-way for a little bit. He's one of the Motor City Cruise's best players. He's been one of the best bigs in the G League for the past 2 seasons with the Sacramento Kings and the Detroit Pistons. But with Isaac Jones, he's got such great touch around the rim. He can finish with either hand. He's got low post moves. You can throw him lobs. Like, Isaac Jones offensively is very intriguing, could play in between a power forward and a center. The only knock on him that I think you watch him and you're like, I wish he could do this a little bit more consistently is defensively, it's just very underwhelming to watch him because he has the size, he has the length, being 6'8, 6'9. He's just not a good defender. Now, he did get better at protecting a rim a little bit with the Motor City Cruise. Like he has all the physical tools to be at least a plus defender protecting the rim, but defensively is the one knock on him. I know I saw some people talk about on Instagram, on our Instagram, I should say, that could Isaac Jones be the Pistons backup four? I don't know about that. I think defensively, JB would be just so frustrated with just like rotations and missed assignments. Like, I don't think he would be a long term force solution. But if you're just talking about like a low post threat, a lob threat, can finish with either hand, has a nice floater game, like he checks a lot of boxes. Obviously, he's a project that the Crews and the Pistons organization are still trying to develop to see if he's worth being on a 15-man rotation, but he's a good depth piece as well as a 4-5 power forward center. The last two-way player is a draft pick, Ugonna Onyenso. Now, his first G League game, G League game, Summer League game, excuse me, I misspoke there. His first Summer League game yesterday, I think a lot of fans were like, wow, that was really bad. Again, a lot of the things that he was struggling with, conditioning, obviously NBA defense. To me, like when I saw the pick, I was like, that's going to be a project development piece for Jamel McMillan, who is the Motor City Cruise head coach, who is a really good development coach. He is going to be a project for the Cruise. I don't think he cracks a rotation with the Detroit Pistons at all this season. That might be an overreaction, but a lot of the things that I saw, he looked like he was out of breath within the first couple of minutes in the first quarter. Like he needs to get his conditioning a little bit better. With how the games are much faster at the NBA level versus college. I think he's going to be a development project for them. But, I could see garbage time. I could see if there's injuries because you look at your center rotation. Right now, you got Paul Reed, Tolu Smith, Jalen Duren's, TBD. We don't really know what's going on with the contract extensions. I'd like to think that he is on the team, but hey, never know. Never say never. So you got Ugonna Onyenso as a potential four-string center for the Detroit Pistons. You like that he's 7 foot. You like that his elite skill is shot blocking. He has shown some touch around the rim, being a lob threat. And maybe there's a three-point shot in there. I know he shot 10 out of 26 from three at Virginia, but I don't really know if that's going to be his game as a pick and pop five. But I did want to go over the two ways with you guys. Again, I'll put the graphic on the screen if you guys didn't see it. Elijah Harkless, Isaac Jones, and Ugonna Onyenso for the Detroit Pistons. Now, I did see some people saying, like, can the Pistons get rid of any of these two ways if we like some players on the I almost said Motor City Cruise. If we like any of the players on the Summer League roster, like I saw a lot of people saying, like, can we give a two-way to Roddy Gale Jr.? 100%. Like, two ways are very easy to just cut and release and waive. Like, it's not a lot of long-term money. The Pistons could definitely afford that if, they really feel Roddy Gale is a piece of their long-term future. They could do it with Drake Allen. They could do it with anyone on this Summer League roster. A lot of the Exhibit 10-day guys will have training camp deals, so they'll have even more opportunities to show out in training camp and also in the preseason. But like those two ways are not set in stone. Obviously, Ugonna Onyenso, to me, I think probably is the one that I would say has the most probability of keeping that two-way this season. Isaac Jones, to me, I know the Pistons are very high on him. They like, what he provides. But again, it really depends the rest of these Summer League games, and it depends how they progress in training camp, which is, 2 months from now, and preseason games, which is around 2 months from now, because it's only July 10th as we're recording this. So a lot of things can happen over the next couple of months, but they want to kind of discuss the two ways. I know this is like super deep in the trenches. I don't really know how many Pistons fans are up to date with the two-way contracts. I try to cover everything for you guys with the Detroit Pistons, whether it's just transactions, two ways, these roster list. But talk to me down below in the comment section. What do you guys think of Victor Wembanyama's new contract extension? How it does affect Jalen Duren's next contract in restricted free agency? The Michael Porter Jr. conversation if the Brooklyn Nets cannot get him on a new deal. Should the Detroit Pistons be interested in trying to trade for him? The tradable pieces that the Pistons can't actually trade, the Ringers top 100 list, and the 3 two-way players on the Detroit Pistons. I'll talk to you guys down below in the comment section. Like always, I hope you guys are staying safe. Take care, and we'll catch you guys in the next podcast episode. Peace.